Wow, that was a really challenging combat. I'm sure glad we all survived.
Yeah, even Fat Cat worked up a sweat.
Yeah, no kidding. It's about time to take a long rest, wouldn't you say?
Great idea.
No, ordinarily I would concur, but didn't we just finish a long rest about 30 minutes ago?
Yeah, so?
Well, according to the rules on page 84 of the Dungeon Master...
Hey! How about you shut up over there?
Well, I think it's only right that our Dungeon Master be aware that...
No, remember what the wise people said that one day?
What did they say?
Ignorance is bliss.
Yep, I agree. And the longer that we can keep our Dungeon Master ignorant about certain rules, the more blissful we're gonna be as players.
Definitely. We need to keep our Dungeon Master on a need-to-know basis. And this is something that he doesn't need to know.
You guys, I'm sitting right here. I'm always sitting right here, even if the camera isn't pointing at me.
Oh, whoopsies, that's our bad.
Yeah, all of these bright lights are really confusing.
Yeah, well, now you can all tell me what these rules are that I'm supposed to know about.
Oh, well, we were just talking about how we're supposed to take at least 1 hour before long resting again. That's all.
Yep, that's it. That's all it was. Well, actually...
No, shut up!
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can use in your Dungeons & Dragons games. Today in the Lair, I'll be discussing how to use the Adventuring Day rules in D&D 5th edition. If a common problem you have in your games is that the group takes long rests all the time, and this makes most of the encounters super easy, then following this rule set will help with that. The Adventuring Day rules will also help you determine how long an adventure you should create and how many encounters there should be in that adventure, depending on how difficult each encounter is. I feel like the Adventuring Day mechanic is probably one of the most misunderstood and most often ignored rules of the game, and not following it can result in headaches and issues in your game. So today we're going to be deep diving into this. But first I want to remind you that my Kickstarter, Into the Fae, is available for pre-order at the link below. It's a level 1 to 5 adventure module based around Fae creatures, many of them new creatures I personally designed, and created to be compatible with D&D 5th edition. If you're looking to run a low-level module for your group that is more than just hack and slash, Into the Fae might be just the thing for you. Furthermore, I've created it to be new Dungeon Master friendly. You don't have to be a veteran or a pro to run this module. I also wrote Into the Fae to be easy to use. It includes abundant read-aloud text, and I placed an emphasis on organization and clear descriptions that will make the module easier to use and reference at the table than many other modules I've seen. So if you want to check Into the Fae out, click that beautiful link down below. Okay, and now onto the Adventuring Day. What is the Adventuring Day? It is a basic mechanic that determines how many encounters a party of adventurers can handle before they need to take a long rest. During this Adventuring Day, before they take that long rest, it also assumes the party will need to take about 2 short rests, just not a long rest. Now, in the context of this rule set, when we say encounter, we're mostly referencing encounters that would drain the party of resources, such as spell slots and hit points, and these are usually combat encounters. Yes, I get that encounters do not have to involve combat, but for the purpose of the Adventuring Day rules, we're talking about combat counters mostly, because non-combat encounters usually don't deplete resources very much. Like players can go talkie all day long and it doesn't take up resources. Now, in case you want to read these rules yourself, they are detailed on page 84 of the Dungeon Master Guide. All right, let's get into some nitty-gritty details. There are 2 ways to determine how many encounters the group can handle during one Adventuring Day. Number 1, you estimate it and call it a day. Per the rules, a group can handle 6 to 8 medium to hard encounters. More if there are more easy encounters, and fewer if there are more hard encounters. Now, when we talk about encounter difficulty, we're talking about these 4 classifications that all encounters fall into: easy, medium, hard, and deadly. I suppose actually there's a 5th called trivial. that's at the very beginning, before easy. And the rules for determining the difficulty of an encounter are on page 82 of the Dungeon Master Guide, but going over those rules is out of scope for the discussion today. Online sites like Kobold Fight Club and D&D Beyond will also help you calculate and determine how hard an encounter would be for a party. In fact, it's often much easier to calculate the difficulty of an encounter using online resources. I personally prefer D&D Beyond, as opposed to trying to punch the numbers by hand. And the second way to determine how many encounters the group can handle in one adventuring day is to just do the math. Based on the level of the characters, how many characters, and the CR and number of monsters, you can calculate how many encounters the group should have before they need to take a long rest. And later in the video, I'm going to explain in detail the math and how to calculate it and give you an example. It's also important to note that this math won't be perfect. The rules around challenge ratings and encounter difficulties are not very good in 5th edition, but this will give us a starting place, and that is helpful. Why is the adventuring day important? Well, the first thing is that it helps you design your adventures. I usually design adventures so that there is one adventuring day's worth of encounters in the entire adventure. That way I know that the group shouldn't need to take a long rest at all during the adventure. They will of course need to take about 2 short rests though, because needing to take a couple short rests is baked into the adventuring day mechanic. And if I do design an adventure that has 1.5 or 2 adventuring days worth of encounters in it, then I know the group will most likely run out of resources, spell slots, hit points, etc. midway through the adventure and need to take a long rest to recover. So when I'm designing an adventure like that, I shouldn't design some sort of ticking clock mechanic that would stop them from long resting. And when they do long rest, I shouldn't penalize them or stop them, because I know that per how I designed the adventure, they need to take that long rest. So the adventuring day helps you determine how long an adventure should be and how many encounters it should have. And this is not a hard and fast rule. Like all rules, it can be broken. Just know that you're breaking it and what it will mean for your game. For instance, if you design an adventure that has 2 adventuring days worth of encounters, you should expect the group to take a long rest about halfway through the adventure. Likewise, if there is only 1/2 an adventurous day worth of encounters, the group will likely be able to finish the adventure without running out of resources. And if there is a boss battle at the end of that adventure, they will have more resources, spell slots, hit points, etc. available to dump into that final battle, possibly making it easier. The biggest pitfall in Dungeons & Dragons, especially 5th edition, that I see is having adventuring days that are too short. Now people don't normally say it that way. People don't reference the adventuring day mechanic because I think a lot of people have no idea what it actually is. This is the way people normally say it. My players take long rests all the time, often after every encounter, and the game is too easy for them. Those are the words a Dungeon Master uses to basically explain to you that he is not using the adventuring day mechanic in his game. Instead, they just throw 1 encounter in the party and that's it. Then the group long rests. And then they rinse and repeat. 1 encounter, long rest. 1 encounter, long rest. I mean, why wouldn't the group do that? And one could argue that's not even adventure design. That's just throwing one-off encounters at the players, and perhaps, if the players are lucky, you have a little story around the encounters, and maybe even some story rationale tying all of these random encounters together. D&D game design is built around resource depletion that happens over the course of several encounters. If you're not building your adventures around that concept, then of course most encounters are going to be super easy. The party can blow their entire wad on every single encounter. To make an encounter challenging when the group is at full resources, you need to make the encounter in the deadly XP threshold, which is described on page 82 of the Dungeon Master Guide. This is the reason that most of my random encounters during overland travel are deadly, because I know the group will be at full resources, and after the encounter, they're going to be able to take a long rest. Generally speaking, when we're traveling from point A to point B, there's usually only 1 encounter per day. That's the way I run my games. I think that's the way a lot of people run their games. I mean, you could have them travel from point A to point B and have a multitude of encounters every single day. And wow, that would probably be some drudgery right there. And right about now, some folks are thinking, well, that's great, Luke, but how do I stop my players from long resting after every encounter? Don't worry, I will be delving into some suggestions for that in just a little bit here. How to use the adventuring day. All right, now I'm gonna do a couple things. First, I'm going to explain how to calculate an adventuring day's worth of encounters for your group, and then I'll explain how to enforce the adventuring day. How to calculate the adventuring day. Well, you're going to be using the Adventuring Day XP chart that's on page 84 of the Dungeon Master Guide. And I'm going to explain this method of calculation by way of an example. Let's say that you have 5 characters in the party and each one is level 5. According to the chart, the adjusted XP per day per character is 3,500. So since we have 5 characters, that's a total of 17,500 XP. And that number is the amount of adjusted experience point value for encounters the party can handle in one adventuring day before they need to take a short rest. Now, to continue with our example, I'm going to pop over to D&D Beyond to illustrate how this works. We'll be using the Encounter Builder tool, which is found in the Tools menu. The first thing we'll do is click Manage Characters and make sure we have 5 level 5 characters. Once we do that, you can see under Encounter Summary the adjusted XP limits for the 4 different difficulties and the daily budget. And that daily budget is the adjusted experience point value for encounters in one adventuring day, hence why it says 17,500, which is the number we already calculated with the chart. Now, let's build an encounter. Let's take some hobgoblins and add 10 of them to an encounter. You can see that's a medium encounter and the adjusted XP value is 2,500. So that 2,500 adjusted XP value applies toward the daily budget, reducing our budget left to spend on encounters to 15,000. Now let's make a new encounter. 4 Hobgoblin Iron Shadows and 1 Hobgoblin Devastator. That's a deadly encounter worth 5,800 adjusted XP, and that comes off our budget, reducing what we have left to spend to 9,200. The next encounter will be 7 Hobgoblins and 1 Hobgoblin Captain. That's a medium encounter worth 3,500 adjusted XP. Then that is subtracted from our daily budget, leaving us with just 5,700 left to spend. Next, we'll be making an encounter with 5 Hobgoblins and 1 Hobgoblin Warlord. That's a deadly encounter worth 5,600 adjusted XP. Subtracting that from our daily budget leaves us with just 100 left to spend. And that's where we stop because those 4 encounters we just created are enough for one adventuring day. That means that after a group has those 4 encounters, their resources will be pretty much all gone and they'll need to take a long rest. If I were making an adventure around hobgoblins, I would have just those 4 encounters in the adventure. Or I could have more encounters, but just know the party will need to take a long rest in the middle of the adventure. Okay, next let's talk about how to run an adventure designed with the adventuring day mechanic. So the basic idea here that we've kind of already talked about is that during the adventure you just made, the group can take about 2 short rests, but they should not need to take a long rest. So when they want to take short rests, that's okay and cool and should be expected. It's part of game design, but they should not take a long rest. And you're like, okay, Luke, but they want to take a long rest. What do I do? Okay, so let's say your players still want to take a long rest after every single encounter or close to it. What do you do then? First, remember that the group can only long rest every 24 hours. So if the group finished a long rest an hour ago, they're gonna have to wait another day before they can do it again. This has serious ramifications if they are dungeon delving. If they stop after every room to long rest or leave the dungeon to do so, that's a day that's gonna pass between every room. That's plenty of time for the inhabitants of the dungeon to reinforce their positions. Go get reinforcements from the dungeon nearby, or just leave the dungeon and go somewhere else if it's that dangerous and somebody's killing off all of their buddies. Or the alarm might get sounded when the hobgoblins find their dead buddies, and then the entire dungeon full of hobgoblins mobilize and start hunting down whoever killed their comrades. Basically, what I'm driving at here is that if your players take a long rest in the middle of an adventure, there should be consequences, just like those I just described. And this is easy to do if you're running location-based adventures that take place in dungeons or castles or whatever. So you could do some of these things I just mentioned, or just have random encounters tables that you roll on. Not only will one of these random encounters happen during the long rest, say, but you could also use some of the random encounters to restock the dungeon. I do this a lot. If my players take a long rest in the middle of a dungeon, even if they retreat and then come back later, I literally restock the dungeon with more monsters for them. The idea here is that when the party long rests, when they shouldn't need to, just because they want to be safe and be at full resources, the dungeon will react and things will get worse for them. This incentivizes them to continue on and finish the dungeon without long resting. Now, if you're running an event-based adventure, it is more challenging to do this. Typically, you're gonna need some sort of ticking clock mechanic that penalizes the party if they take a long rest and thus motivates them not to do so. And I talked about that a little bit in my video about event-based adventures. For instance, if a murderer is on the loose, we could say that every day they kill a new victim. So every time the group rests, a new victim is murdered. That's an example of a ticking clock. Adventuring Day objections. The biggest objection I see about using the Adventuring Day rules is that Dungeon Masters don't want to have 6 to 8 encounters in an adventure. That's just too much. Well, I think we saw in my example here in this video that we ended up with 4 encounters because a couple were deadly. So if you want fewer encounters in your adventures, which is a perfectly fine way to design your adventures if that's what you want to do, then you just make more of the encounters deadly and then you end up with fewer of them. They don't have to all be deadly, they could just be harder and thus you need fewer of them to make up your quota for the Adventuring Day. And then doing it that way, you'll still be using the Adventuring Day rule set and you're also accomplishing your goal of having fewer encounters in your adventure. And here's the other thing, you don't have to use these rules. If you're okay with there just being a couple encounters and having them be easy and a cakewalk for your players, that's your choice. Or if you want there to be a crazy long dungeon where the players can't rest and they need to use their wits or diplomacy or stealth or whatever to figure out how to overcome the challenge, that's also your choice. Run the game the way you want to run your game. Just be aware that if you don't use the Adventuring Day rule set, things will be far easier or harder for the players. My point here is that you, the Dungeon Master, should at least know the rules and then make an informed choice, not an ignorant choice. If you're looking for a low-level module to run for your D&D group, don't forget to check out Into the Fae at the link below. It has lots of cool new Fae creatures, and it is sure to be tons of fun for you and your players. I guarantee it to be fun. I feel like that's probably something I shouldn't be guaranteeing. And if you enjoy the dumb facial expressions I made in this video, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment for the algorithm down below. Let YouTube know that I don't completely suck. Next week, I'll be discussing how to create homebrew monsters, but until then, click right here to binge on my adventure creation playlist. And until next time,
Let's play D&D!